Hi, Saran. Thanks so much for taking the time today and allowing us to interview with Ignite Her. So I'll just go a little introduction in who you are, and then obviously you can tell us more about yourself and just answer some of the questions that we have today. So for those of you who don't know, Saran is recognized as part of the top 30 disability leaders in the world, which I find like so cool. Just to be like top 30 in the entire world, like wow. Forbes 30 under 30 bound, like, oh, but also like getting back to the topic, she is a disability advocate and commissioner for the California Department of Education Advisory Commission Special Education and the first Mongolian American official in history to be on that commission, as well as the first youth to have voting rights on that commission, which is super exciting and also like super interesting. I definitely have questions on that later. And then last but definitely not least of like these amazing accomplishments is that she is a National Youth Fellow for the Center for Advising Policy on Employment for Youth, which is super incredible and represents 7.6 million disabled youth around the country. So I'm super excited to get to do this interview today and learn more about you. So moving on to the questions. First, can you tell us a little bit about your work and what motivates you besides what like people already see on Instagram or on social media?
So yeah, so the work that I do is a lot of and a lot of, for example, like as a student commissioner for the California Department of Education, Advisory Commission on Special Education, I'm usually attending a lot of like state meetings. And my role as a youth commissioner is to really give youth input and youth voices on certain bills. For example, there's one thing that I really worked on was there was a bill that came to our commission meeting about changing the term emotional disturbance to emotional disability. And that is a bill that has a lot of impact in our community because a lot of disabled students were given labels in
Mhm.
history, and and it's not ideal to give student disabled students a label. So we really worked, the SELPAs came together and we really worked on passing that bill to change that so we can reduce stigma for students with disabilities across California, making sure that we are being inclusive and changing our language and helping those. So I was able to vote yes to support the bill. And actually, in that process, it went to the assembly and then it went to the state senate. And then afterwards, it got signed by Governor Newsom in this summer, I believe. So I'm really happy about that bill, and I'm really glad that I was able to those voice voicing disabled youth voices for that bill. But also, my biggest focus on my commission work is not only do I represent 800,000 students with disabilities across California, but also really focusing on how can I help other systems that are not acknowledged. A lot of us forget about the juvenile justice system, foster youth, homeless youth, and one of my biggest mission is to work with those systems. And what I do is I give youth inputs on those and making sure that I work with different systems together and bring those systems together. Sometimes I would at my commission meeting and be like, I would love to hear a report from a Department of Juvenile Justice or some in that area. I would love to hear from them to come here and do a presentation about it because this is such a big impact. This is so important and this is something that we don't acknowledge enough. So I really like to bring the systems together so adults in my area can really understand and know that these things do occur and this is a big part. And so this past summer, I worked on an article. I don't know when it will be published, but it will be published soon. But it was an article about the juvenile justice where I interviewed a a disability lawyer from a firm, and person, a SELPA director from the LA County Department of Education, where he's in charge of the juveniles there. And I did an interview with both of them talking about like what juvenile justice is like for those with disabilities and what can we do together to unite that system, making sure that we're making sure that we are not becoming a more punitive system, but what can we do to really help them? How can we support them? How can we rehabilitate them and give back to society in a way? I really worked on that project, and a lot of my work is just usually giving youth input and youth voices on things. So that is some of the significant works I've done so far. And other significant works is giving feedback for IEP templates and creating a new system and creating like a new template for that. But also another important thing I do is I go to a lot of conferences. I
Mhm.
go to a lot of education-based conferences or mental health-based conferences. And when I attend education mental health conferences, I'm usually asked to be a keynote speaker or a panelist where I talk about the importance of youth representation, but the importance of accountability. How can we as youth force our adults to become better leaders? Because I tell them that taking risks allow us, this is a quote that I hold by and I created and I established, and I say, taking risks allow us to grow and learn like plants, because if we don't take those risks to make progress, then we're never going to make progress. We're going to always be in this stuck in the system. That is why we need to work together in a way. So that's a lot of my biggest impacts I've probably made at conferences, is really giving speeches and really starting those conversations, connecting with adults, with other parts of the system. How can they really collaborate and work with each other? Because honestly, the system, we're creating a system for youth. And if we don't have youth voices in it, then what the freak are we doing? So that's why it's important.
Mhm. So many like little golden nuggets in everything you just said. I think one thing that I really took away was this kind of like this concept of intersectionality in everything that you're talking about and in all the work you're doing. I know with like Ignite Her, one of our pillars within like feminism is having that intersectionality. And within that, I think you've expressed this talking to like these older people in government that you're working on, like they aren't really cognizant of issues that like foster teenagers are going to be facing in their education, or juvenile students that also face disabilities. Like they aren't recognizing these things. It's like one identity or the other. And I think those same things apply to like everyone. Like I'm not just like the person who I look like. I also face different things, and those are different issues that have to be recognized. And so I think it's so amazing that you're really able to take like different kind of marginalized identities and show these individuals and show these adults in government that like, hey, like there are people that are facing like such unique conditions that aren't being recognized or just being labeled. I think another thing that you mentioned was changing that language from emotional disturbance to emotional disability, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, because like as we talk about within Ignite Her, like we're talking about rhetorical feminism. So we could be doing, and we do engage with like those outside acts of feminism, such as like period drives and like really creating those outside impacts. But at the end of the day, how we speak about things really matters too. And so I was wondering if you could like speak more to that, like changing this language from emotional disturbance to emotional disability. How do you think like that change in language really allows, disabled students to benefit from that and kind of have a different understanding of like their identity and their community and who they are?
So actually, this bill really correlated with my experiences when I was very little. I struggled to make friends. I struggled to really understand people. It wasn't because I was just like that. It was also because like I've been through so many aspects of my life that created that. And so a lot of disabled students with disabilities, they have this thing called an IEP, which is an individual education plan, and it lists the types of categories, the types of like disabilities you have, or specific categories they put you under, and they put me under as emotional disturbance. And what that term really means, it means that a kid who does not have the ability, like they're really disturbed, like they're disruptive, they're emotionally out of control, basically. And when you say that to someone who is not emotionally disturbed, it really kind of impacts them. So throughout my life, I was always told, you're always emotionally disturbed. You're always going to be like this because you act like this way. I mean, like, and that really created this stigma for me, like wherever I go. Like, I don't want to be seen as someone like who is insane or crazy or
Mhm.
anything. I'm just a student and I have needs. I struggle a lot and I need support. So it's really important for like now adults that ever since this passed, I talked to educators and teachers at my school about this and told them about this new bill. They were very happy. They said that I'm really glad I'm able to change this because we should never be putting students with labels. There
Mhm.
are lots of labels in the education term that we still need to continue to fix, but this is a really big issue for a lot of students. And telling youth that, hey, we changed the label, we changed the term from emotional disturbance to emotional disability to a lot of kids. They were like, I'm really glad. I'm really finally happy to be recognized that I'm okay. Because the thing is, when you call someone emotion disturbed when they're not, it causes a lot of issues and causes stigma for that kid. So now, when I look at my past IEPs and past forums, when I see I was used to be called emotion disturbance, I don't know, it brought a lot of flashbacks and was like, oh, I used to be called that way, but now I'm not called that way. I'm actually a normal student. I'm a normal student. I have my needs, but I'm actually like people can understand me and understand what's happening because when you put when you also put a label on a kid, they're gonna perceive like they're emotionally insane, but actually not, and that prohibits people from helping those people. It really, instead of really understanding and helping that kid, it really pushes away and be like, oh yeah, this kid's this, we're not gonna help them. Like, of course that wouldn't happen, but like it has happened for many people. So by doing this, it really allows people to really work with children, really understand, like, hey, you've had this, how can we really support you? And really, it really changes the whole language.
Mhm.
It's more like it creates inclusive, but also it just
Yeah.
creates language in a
Hmm.
way.
Yeah. Thanks so much for like sharing that experience. And I think that's also something that helps a lot of people understand why simple things like how we talk about people matter when like, we go on our day and like free speech, but at the end of the day, like everything you say is an impact. And I think that's something that's super important that a lot of people don't recognize, but is still incredibly important and like part of that kind of rhetorical advocacy. So moving on to the next question. What is your experience with misogyny as a young leader? And also, like, don't be afraid to add in any experiences you've had with being like having disabilities, any discrimination that you've experienced because of that. And I know, like, you yourself said that you want to show that people with disabilities can also be leaders. And so, kind of sharing that experience, what that was like, and how you've overcome any barriers that have existed.
So actually, this is going to be very unique, but when I was very little, I actually saw my disability as a burden. I
Mhm,
actually didn't like really want it. Like, I was like, this is a burden to me. I can't do this anymore. Like, it just felt that way
mhm,
because when I was very little, I was always segregated in classes. I was told that I am a special need kid. I have to be in this room, special room. I have to be with kids who look the same as me or feel the same as me. And after being in that for such a long time, I was like, I don't like something, it feels wrong to me. Like sometimes in PE class, I want to do something, problems I can't do it because I'm not physically able to or mentally able to. I feel like I was left out. I felt like I can't do it. But then for the most part of my life, I was always told, you can't do it. You're disabled. You can't just do this. And some people would ask me when I was in middle school, they're like, how do you have a 4.0 even when you have autism spectrum? And I'm like, uh it really hurts. Or when some people I don't think you can be a leader because you did you were like this in the past. How can you be able to do that? Why are you like this? I don't know, like people would make fun of me for going to the resource room for getting help, and that kind of hindered my ability to be like, it really scared me. And I was like, I don't think I can be able to be a leader. I used to feel that way, and I would come home crying a lot of the times, and my mom, she would tuck me in and she would tell me that, Saran, don't ever tell yourself your disability is a burden to you because your disability is a special gift that you hold. It is a gift, who you are, and nothing's going to change that. You are perfectly fine for who you are. You have passion, you have ambition, and please continue that. And ever since my mom has shaped the way how I think about disability, I really had to learn. I've learned to come a long way and learned that I'm grateful for the opportunities, but also I'm really grateful of understanding who I am and my ability to shine. And I guess a lot of times I see a lot of people in me, but also a lot of people is that people think that, oh, you have a mental health illness. Oh, you're this, you're coming from this background. Oh, you're a woman like this. It really breaks people down, but people don't understand that that is not true because we make assumptions. And here's the thing, we make so much assumptions about people, their identities, but the problem is that when we make assumptions, we're stuck in this system and we're not going to get out of it.
mhm,
If we continue to make assumptions, we're not going to make progress, we're not going to make change. All assumptions it creates this whole like cycle,
mhm,
division repeatedly over time. And what I tell people is don't judge by the book it's cover. Don't assume just because I have a disability. Don't assume because your disability does not hinder your ability to shine, your ability to be whoever you want to be in your world. From middle school, ever since I found my disability as a gift, I actually ran for student government in sixth grade. I was like, you know what? Why not I run? Because I know I have ability to shine. I have the ability to voice my concerns. I have the ability to lead. Ever since doing that in sixth grade and seventh grade and eighth grade, I've learned to not really give up and really reach for my dreams in a way.
mhm.
Despite people saying, oh, I'm just doing it for college apps. Oh, I'm doing this because like,
Yeah.
but I was very passionate about and very excited about the work that I do in middle school. And then later on in middle school, I started to found the Middle School Representation Club, which deeply fell in love in representing middle school, is representing young voices and their voices to be deserved. You don't need you don't need a college degree. You don't need fancy connections. You don't need any of that to be a leader or whoever you want to be. You don't need all of that to become an artist, dancer, or you name it, whoever you want to be. And so now in high school, as I go in high school, people don't say things to me anymore. They start to really understand that it's important to not judge by the book its cover, but also to really understand people's passion and drive. And what I like to do is I love to empower youth and tell youth that your disability, your disability, the assumptions people make about you, that is not true, and it does not hinder your ability to succeed in life. And always voice your concerns and always voice who you are. And I believe you can do it because that's really important.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I mean, thank goodness your mom went her way and told you to like that your disability was a gift because I'm sure like the work that you've done has been a gift to like the millions of disabled youth that you've been able to represent. And so that's so amazing. I think something that you talked about with like this whole assumptions and how like people create assumptions kind of like
Yes.
connected back to like, yeah, what I've always had like had this idea last year, especially that our assumptions and everything that we have in society is like a construct of comfort. And so people are uncomfortable when they think of like, someone like Kamala Harris, a woman of
Yes.
color being president. They're uncomfortable with that. And so they create these assumptions like, oh, that can't happen because I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with change. So I'm just going to stick with these like destructive assumptions that really like hinder youth and hinders leadership and hinders like everything amazing that we could have in the world. And so, yeah, taking that time to like break assumptions, to like recognize that and be comfortable with the uncomfortable so we can like let this kind of amazing change occur. I think that's amazing. Yeah, going on to the next question, I think would you consider yourself a feminist and what does feminism mean to you if you could define it in your own way?
Oh, I I think that I think that I am a feminist and I'm proud to be a feminist. I think that when we talk about the word feminism, when we talk about certain words like that, people assume that, oh, to be a feminist, you need to be supporting women's rights in total. Like, you need to be doing this all the time. But actually, it doesn't mean that way, actually. It means that you're able to amplify youth, adult, elderly, anyone's women's voices across. It's basically saying, like, I'm so excited to represent your voice. I'm excited to represent this voice. And I think that for me, it's like when what feminism really means to me is like it means to empower and amplify young women's voices to women's voices. Even like, because people think that, oh, to be a feminist, you need to be supporting women's rights, not men's rights, not this rights. It doesn't actually mean that, though. It doesn't really mean that. It means that we support all gender rights, how we can all be a part of this together. Because honestly, you can be like, I support women's rights, and someone be like, oh, but like, isn't women's right just for women's right? And I'm like, no, it's not for women's right. It doesn't take one person to advocate for one person's needs. It takes a whole bunch of people together, different experiences, different backgrounds, and different people and genders all together advocating for gender rights, basically, in my opinion. And that really creates that feminism, in my opinion. And feminism really means to me is to empower young women voices, but empower all gender voices together. Because when we see feminists advocating for their body and their rights, we see that it inspires other people, other groups and advocacy groups start advocating for theirs as well. I like to see that collective hope, that collective care that we are doing. And that's why I feel very proud to be a feminist because yes, I'm a woman, but you don't, but like I support all women. I support all genders included because it's not just about women's rights, it's about all the genders' rights together. And we all need to be part of it together because it's not going to take one. It takes all of us. Nothing but without us, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, I can totally relate. I think at first, like, when I was thinking, like, am I a feminist, like, women's rights and all that, I was like, well, like, I was a man hater, because that's what I thought I had to be. Like, that was the assumption. Like, okay, if you're a feminist, you have to be a man hater. And I was like, bet, like, I hate men, like, no kids, But really, I think for me, it was like that reversal of Roe v. Wade when, like, I took my butt to the books and I went to the library and I was like, okay, I read this book called Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. And so, like, okay, like, number one, that created this idea, like, okay, I can be a bad feminist and, like, maybe I don't have to hate men, but really just like recognizing there's so much more to feminism than just women's rights. Or like, I think what I've discovered lately is that like this whole repertoire of like feminism and the ideas like being a man hater and everything is like based off of getting like women's privileges and not women's rights. For example, like women's rights would be like food deserts and like, violence that they're experiencing in like different communities, rather than just being like, do I have to wear heels or not? Or do I have to shave like my hair or not? Like, no one really cares about like those privileges and like how you look, but there are people facing like real issues. And so there's so many different aspects to feminism. I think like representing everyone is a huge aspect of that and a great aspect of that. I think like going off of that, do you think that in your experience, and feel free to like critique feminism here too, do you think feminism has advocated for like people with disabilities, have like recognized people with disabilities, or do you think that has been like left in the limelight and kind of just not talked about as much?
Okay, I think that if I really think about it, and well, if I really think about it from history's perspective, but also my perspective is we do see some of it, but we don't see enough of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should see more of it. We should be showcasing more young women disability leaders in the world because they're part of it. We're all a part of this together. And I think that's really important that we all need to show that. And I think that for me, like when I was like doing my commissioner application, I was looking to my mom and I was looking at people and I was like, huh, is there anyone in this world who have a disability and who's a woman and running this nation? And I said, there is a few, but there isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really look on the data of how many percentage of those with disability who are in positions of power, wait, it's like literally like six to like 10%. Six range from 6 to 10%. And that's actually not enough. That's actually very small of people
Yeah.
in power and position of power with a disability.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we see so much of people of guys like being, oh, I have a disability, I've been doing this, yes, which is incredibly great, but we don't see enough of women with disabilities being acknowledged, recognized, because they also really believe in feminism. They believe in that, but also they want to empower other young youth and women as well, that they can be it too. Because honestly, I'm gonna say this, history isn't just about memorization or fact, it's
Mm-hmm.
about the stories. And about the stories, how we can influence and create more of that. For women's rights, we can continue to inspire more other parts of groups to be a part of that in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a feminist, but you can also be disabled. You can be this, but you can also be disabled. We need more of that. We need more Asian American representation, but we also need more representation in general for women because we need to inspire that. But also, why do we not have that? Why don't we not have representation? Why do we have where we're going through all of this? It's also because it's the system we live in. The system we live in, it's rooted in all of these and all in white supremacy. It's rooted in all of these type of things, and that lacks us. That really like clogs us from actually creating change happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that it's important that we we really empower ourselves. We empower other voices to be a part of a conversation because that really creates change. Because if we don't do anything, then if we don't do anything, then then who are we going to tell the stories to? How are we going to share our history? How do we share that? And that's really important. And that's what I want to do is I want to empower other girls with disabilities that you can be anything you want to be in the world. You can be a leader, you can be an artist, you can be a firefighter, you can be anything. You can be literally anything you want because you can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll say even myself that I've taken US history through women's eyes. I've taken women's health at a community college. I've taken women in political science, women in politics, and I've done my dabbling in feminism and like reading feminist literature. And not once have I ever seen like a character or an individual or a political representative that was a woman with disabilities. Like I haven't seen that anywhere. And so you are probably like the most impressive person that I know that has that experience. And so I'm lucky that I get to know you, but also like, whoa, like where is this representation that we need? And like kind of like diverse representation. Everyone has a different like
course.
way in which they have like experience life, but all of these experiences matter. I mean, kind of connecting to what you said, like feminism isn't just about women's rights, it's about like gender's rights. You know, like everyone benefits when women's rights are upheld. Like men are benefiting from this as well. And I think the same thing goes for like people with disabilities. Once we start accommodating and recognizing people with disabilities within our government, within our healthcare, within that, like people who are not disabled currently still benefit from that because they know that no matter what, they'll be taken care of and they'll have that support. And so, really, it's like acknowledging the people that have different experiences in life because at the end of the day, it benefits all of us. You know, it's not like we're just giving attention towards one group. Like, no, it's going to benefit everyone. And so, we have to recognize that.
And we learn from different people. We learn different stories. We
Mm-hmm.
learn all of that. And that really creates the future for all of us to learn from. And like I said, feminism isn't just about women's rights, it's about all rights in total and
Mm-hmm.
how that connects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know we are gonna run out of time soon. So I just want to like leave the final question. Is there anything you would like to share to any like young women or a young student with disabilities? Anything that you want to recognize with the remaining time that we have? Something that you want to like get out there and that hasn't like maybe been spoken out enough about?
Oh, this is a really good
Or
one.
like sharing on like that quote you told us, kind of like how you came up with that.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Um, the quote that I wanted to talk more about is taking risks allow us to grow and learn like plants. You're probably like, why did you create this quote? What's the meaning of this quote? It really means that take whatever opportunity, whatever experience you have, and learn from that and grow from that. Because here's the thing, we're not gonna know if we don't take that change, we don't learn to take that change. For example, like in your student government, there's gonna be changes happening. There's gonna be changes in your government, there's gonna be changes in everything. You can always stick with it, that's fine. But the problem is you will never know until you try something out. You will never know if you don't make those relationships happen. You will never know how life will turn out if you don't take those risks. I took a risk to represent over 800,000 students with disabilities across California this last year, and this is my last year of doing it. And that's a risk I took, a risk that I take on my own time to represent children and to empower their voices. And that's why it's important that I ask all of you to go take those risks. Go find who you are. Go find what you love, your passion, your desires, and learn from those risks. Learn and grow because that's what makes you a better human being. And we can do this together by learning together and growing from each other because we can't rewrite history. We cannot rewrite the past. We cannot stick with the same thing. We have to learn how things, we have to learn new changes, new stories, new systems, and that's how we become better human beings.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful quote and kind of like this whole analogy of being a plan and learning and taking whatever experiences that we have to be able to help others. Kind of reminds me of like trees, they communicate with each other like through their roots. And so we really are just like plants and we have to be able to communicate with each other in order to create like a thriving ecosystem and a thriving community. And I think that's a beautiful representation of what we should be doing more. So with that, thank you so much, Saran, for taking the time to interview with us today and really sharing everything you've had. I've had a blast and I've just learned so much. And I think you've shared so many like valuable experiences and also just like an insight to what you really do and how you've changed the life of millions of youth in America and I'm sure throughout the world. One of the top 30 disability advocates in the world. Like, wow. But yeah, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Nancy.